Ayman Khan here, 40 seconds out with Matchroom Boxing CEO Frank Smith. Frank, good to see you. We've just seen the weigh-in for Fischer versus Allen 2. Look, I know you're not a big boxing man in terms of tactics and things like that, but Johnny Fischer's your man, and he's the ticket seller and the prospect heading towards and climbing that ladder. When it came to the decision to make the rematch, how concerned were you considering the first fight?
But look, I think the first fight showed the heart, the balls, the courage that Johnny Fischer's got. He did not stop coming. Respect to both men, though, as well, going straight back in there. It was a real fight. You know, Johnny Fischer, there was never any other fight he wanted. He wanted to go straight back in there. He wanted to prove a point. You know, the reality is, the outcome in terms of where people are upset about the outcome, it's nothing to do with Johnny Fischer. He gets in the ring, he fights, he gives it everything he can. He did that. And the judges made their decision. You know, I think he would have learned a lot in that fight to take into this one. I think you're going to see a much better Johnny Fischer. I think you're going to see a better Dave Allen as well. But I think the improvements of Johnny Fischer are going to show why he can continue to build and develop in this sport. Because I think as well, if you've got that heart and courage to go through what he went through, especially what was it, round 5 as well, and keep coming, you know, the opportunities are endless for you.
The narrative surrounding the fight afterwards from Gareth and others helped create the rematch in a sense?
I think the narrative of a lot of people thinking Dave won helped create it. You know, it was a great fight. It was a close fight. I can understand why people feel Dave won, of course. You know, but it's about seeing great fights, and that's what people want to see. So, and the narrative was there. This isn't a narrative of two people who are slagging each other off and don't like each other. It's about an entertaining fight where a load of people thought the decision was wrong, and that's why we're seeing it again. So I'm excited for it. It's the kind of fights we need to make. You know, we're going to have 7,000 people in the Copper Box tomorrow night. Johnny Fischer, as you say, a huge ticket seller, but as well, they're coming for the fight. They're coming for a fight, and they're bought into the narrative of that fight, and they're excited for it.
How close or how much of a possibility was it that Johnny might have gone a different way as opposed to going for Dave straight away?
Not at all. Not at all. No, not at all. I mean, there was never a discussion from Johnny or any suggestion that he didn't want to do this fight. And you have to commend him for that, because a lot of people would go. If you were in his position, you've got to win, and then you're a huge ticket seller and can go on, you know. But he wanted to prove himself, and that's what he's doing.
What's the sleeper fight on the card, Frank?
I like the after seeing them at the face-off today. I like the Kieran Conway fight, the back and forth between them two, and the bread maker. The bread maker, that's what they call him, don't they? Yeah, that was his nickname, wasn't it? Yeah. Warburton. It makes sense now, doesn't it? Yeah. Sorry. I think you need a bit of back and forth. I think, look, George Liddard, Jimmy Sains, two great prospects we got. They're going to continue to step up through the ranks, big ticket sellers in their own right as well. John Hedges back out on the card. Shannon Ryan on the card. Laylee. Yes, I'm excited. I'm excited for the night ahead.
Get your thoughts on the wider boxing sphere. First of all, we saw on Sky Sports Eddie Hearn making a plea and also feeling that he was teased, or the public is being teased by Tyson Fury putting all these posts out and the possibility of making the Fury versus AJ fight. Eddie is obviously the speaker, but you're the one behind the scenes that makes the deals. Eddie was saying that this is something that takes one phone call maybe between them to make the fight. Is it as simple as that, where that phone call gets made and then you guys come in, or there's a lot more behind the scenes that needs to be done to make that fight materialize?
I think if both guys want that fight can be made very easy. Simple to make. A lot of work that goes into then getting it all over the line, but the fact of agreeing a fight can be quite easy, and I think that's a fight. If Tyson wants to come back, I think that's the fight you see. You know, I think it's the biggest fight in British boxing. So fingers crossed.
Does AJ return this year, you feel, off of the back of this surgery that he's going to go through?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the only difficult piece is time-wise. So if he can't get back for September, it's hard to do a stadium fight, as we know. Unless you go to Cardiff, I don't believe this fight sort of should be in Cardiff. I think it's too big of a fight. I think it should be in London, ideally. So we have to see time frames. We have to see how they play out. If not, could he fight this year and then make that fight in sort of spring next year, possibly? But I feel like we've done so much talking about things over the years, and we're all guilty of that, by the way, all of us. And now it's about trying to make it happen. Let's see if we can. It's the biggest fight, as I say.
Spoke to John Fury over in Budapest pre the Tommy Fury return to the ring, and he said when it comes to Fury versus AJ, he doesn't want to see it. It feels like the horse is bolted and it's a number of years too late. I would then contest that. That's still a huge fight between the two of them. In terms of interest, in terms of market interest, is it as big as it once was? Is there that slipping spotlight for that fight?
I don't believe so. Look, could it have done 100,000 more buys? Like, maybe. You never know. Is the reality of it. I think it's still the biggest fight in British boxing. I think the narrative has built and built and built and built over years, and it's the fight people want to see. And we all know what we buy into. By the time that fight comes around, after 4 months of build-up, after press conference after press conference after press conference, everyone is going to be talking about that fight. We know how those big fights transcend the country. Look at Eubank Ben just a few weeks ago. This is no different. These are two much bigger names in terms of like within the sport of recent times, if you're honest, in terms of where they've been, and it's a fight that people have wanted to see for many years. I don't think it's any smaller. I think it just continues to be the fight people want to make happen, and we're all aligned with that.
September is obviously many months away, but what point do you say, look, Tyson Fury isn't giving us the signals that fight's going to be made, and we look at other options, and with Wilder looking to return to the ring, maybe comes back in explosive fashion, and there's a rekindle of that rivalry that you can put in instead of Fury?
Yeah, like I've said before, in the past, I like the Wilder. Again, it's about narrative, it's about storylines. Another fight, Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, that's been spoken about for years, hasn't it? So that is a fight that I like as well. Ultimately, I'm not Anthony Joshua though. I'm just it's my opinion of it. We all want to see the Fury fight, but if we saw AJ against Wilder and AJ against Fury, happy days. Again, could it have happened years ago? Yes. But are people still interested in seeing it now? Yes, 100%.
I spoke to Anthony Joshua, of course, and outside of just the fighting interest, he has an interest in investing into Watford Football Club, his football club, not in terms of actual support, but his area, my football club. I do support that. Have you heard anything about Anthony Joshua's plans to invest and whether that might involve Matchroom in some form?
Matchroom used to be involved in a football club, obviously in Leyton Orient. Football clubs are very hard financially to make work, and you can't really win owning a football club. I'm always shocked when people buy football clubs because it's if you have a bad game, everyone hates you, and they go sack the board, even though the board are paying for the club to run in on many occasions when clubs don't make money. Look, if that's what AJ's looking to do, he's been very sensible with his money. He's made a lot of great investments. He's a smart guy, and like you say, wants to support the community. So if he does, looking forward to getting some ballroom tickets and dressing up, sitting alongside him.
Well, we'd have to obviously sort the form out and see what happens there on that front, that football front. But we'll leave that for a moment. Obviously, interesting in terms of yourself, and I've seen you do a few interviews off the back of Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benyan. First of all, the possibility of a rematch. When does the discussion move on from a rematch, and is there a deadline on that if it is to take place?
No, look, the contracts are there. The fight was always a 2-fight deal. Either way, there was a rematch in place for that fight. One of the things that we're waiting, obviously, His Excellency said in the ring after the fight that the rematch would be back at Tottenham. And one thing we're waiting on now is obviously the football fixtures, I think, come out on June 15th or June 17th, around that kind of dates. So that will slightly adjust the date of where we fall. We've got a couple of options we're looking at, obviously, but it's a huge fight. It's the fight people want to see. So, unless anything changes from the Eubank side, that fight's there and done and agreed.
Would there be any movement on the rehydration element from a Eubank Jr. perspective? I think Eddie said before, I'd appropriately mention which interview it was, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But I think he said that the contracts stipulate right now that it would be the same rehydration clause, but off the back of the videos, investigations as well too, of how Eubank Jr. made that rehydration process and the weight initially. Would there be any movement in changing that, making the weight of 160 and then rehydration as well?
I mean, look, I think the fight is all agreed on the same terms for the rematch, like as in that was there. We don't represent Chris Eubank Jr. We represent Conor Benyan. So reading the internet and seeing what people say online about everything is like, it can be frustrating because ultimately we negotiate this fight and they negotiated the best deal for Chris Eubank Jr. And that was all the terms, whether it was the ring, the weight, this, that, the other, and same for Conor Benyan. And no one forced Chris Eubank Jr. into doing it. No one forced Conor Benyan into doing it. They both agreed. Conor Ben came up 2 weight divisions. Chris made 160 and had the second day weigh-in, rehydration, second day weigh-in at 170. And they both agreed those terms individually. And no one was forced into doing it. And I see some of this narrative that Matchroom pushed Chris. No, we didn't. We said your natural weight is 160, which it has been for a long time. Obviously, you never see fighters cutting weight to the public. When have we seen in recent times? UFC, a lot of MMA fighters show it a lot more. Fighters, not just Chris, but over the years, have been through processes. I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a trainer, I'm not a specialist within this field, right? I'm not a doctor. I don't, have been through processes over the years to lose weight. Some camps, and I've promoted hundreds and maybe thousands of fighters over the years. Some fighters go, some camps, it's easy to do the weight, or it's harder to do the weight this time. As you get older, I'm sure it becomes harder to do the weight as well. But Chris is naturally a 160 fighter if you look at his career. That's the weight he's made. And when he's gone up to 168 in the past, he said he's not big enough, or he hasn't been big enough at 168. And he always wanted to win a world title at 160. He wanted to fight Janibek, he wanted to fight all these people. So people saying Matchroom pushed him down to make weight. All his talk was that he was going to go for a world title fight at 160 before Conor Ben, right? So that's the first bit when people say it. But you never see what fighters go through. And a lot of fighters go through, push themselves to make weight. That's the reality of it. Whether we see it or not, that's the truth of it. And obviously we all want to make the sport as safe as possible. But that also means the participants have to be, if you're the one in the process, you're agreeing the weight from his side, that's their job to do. So where we sit from, we're agreeing a deal. And I also go back to the first fight when people said it was disgusting, you tried to make him make 157. That was the weight that was suggested when they were going to do Kell Brook, which we weren't involved in. When Chris Eubank Jr. was possibly going to fight Kell Brook, 157 was suggested as the weight. That is where that weight came from. Not us. But obviously for Conor Ben coming up from 147, you want to limit as much as possible the strengths on it. You want to balance it out. And our job is to do the best possible deal for Conor Ben, just like theirs. So it is frustrating reading it all because he's a grown man who agreed to do it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I read it and it's like Matchroom fault. No, he accepted these terms, and if he wouldn't have been happy with them, he wouldn't have accepted them. So can the terms change? Right now, the contractual position is they're the same as last time. And it's not me saying lots of things change in boxing, but that's not for us to do, if that makes sense. I'm not going to sit here and go, actually, we should make the fight 175 because it will be better for, that'd be very counterproductive, wouldn't it? That's obviously, if there's a discussion to be had and they want to say we want to do X, Y, Z, then there's a discussion. But right now the contractual terms are set as per what they were agreed by both sides.
I get what you're saying, and off of the back of the first fight, of course, Chris ended up in hospital. I spoke to Harlem. He said it was severe dehydration that kept him in the fight, in amongst, of course, the bruises and scrapes he would have suffered in the fight. But so, do you then feel it would be from a Eubank Jr.'s team perspective, or maybe even the board perspective, to say, look, if that's what's happened after the first fight, then we shouldn't sanction or allow that second fight to happen under those terms?
Yeah, but it depends. Like I say, if he's going to go and fight someone else at 160, which has always been, by the way, forget, if Conor Ben didn't happen, that fight, he would have been fighting at 160 for a world title, is what he said. It's nothing to do with Conor Ben. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So the majority of the reaction was to him making 160, I feel, at the time. Because he put out those videos of him making the weight. So forget Conor Ben for a second. He would have been fighting Janibek at a weight class of 160. He would have had to have made that weight that he made, right? So it's nothing to do. That's nothing to do with Conor Ben. The rehydration second day weigh-in, he didn't. I believe he weighed in a jacket. Do you get? So I feel like it's being put in a position like this was forced upon him to do. The 160, which was really, I think, in the whole thing, that was what got them, because he posted all of the videos of what he had to do to get to 160. That's nothing to do with us, is it? I.e., that's nothing. He would have done that if he fought Janibek. So it's up to his team as to whether he fights at 160 again. I can't say, did he have a bad camp? Was he sick? Was he this? I can't say that. Because I've been with fighters before who make the same weight over and over again, and one time it's really hard, and they don't make it, or they miss it. That's happened in the past, not just Chris Eubank Jr. So it's really for them, not for us, because we're saying we do what we agree to do. It has to be for them to decide what, you know. I have no say in what he does. It's irrelevant what I think.
Chris said in the Diary of the CEO interview, obviously it was a long interview, so I picked out the highlights. First of all, I think he said in the second fight, should it happen, he would receive a larger share of money. Is that the case, that Chris would come up on the A side of the negotiations should the rematch happen? The second time around, he would receive more money than...
I don't know what the structure. Again, we negotiated it separately, obviously. So he negotiated his side, we negotiated our side. We did a deal that everyone, either side was happy with. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly what his deal is.
The other thing was, of course, is you mentioned that you had been putting some roadblocks in his career off of the back of the boxer and matchroom rivalry. He felt that you'd now become enemies in a sense, and the relationship had broken down between yourselves. Personally, I'm not particularly interested in the personal stuff, relationship at home and things, but in terms of the boxing sense, how did you feel reacting to Chris's point of view on how things had been in the last few years?
Yeah, look, I think, and again, I read a lot of the stuff like in responses to things. People going, you question why he says these things about you because of what happened 2 years ago with the whole Conor Benyan situation. I'm talking about me from the things I've done. We're talking about issues like he was talking about signing with us before he signed with Boxer. So this isn't, say July last year, he was talking about signing with us, having conversations. His manager Napa said we'd be the best place for him to go. And you can ask him, and if he says something different, then I'll have a chat with him. But so if we're scumbags, if we're so untrustworthy, if we're so dangerous, why are you even having a conversation with us? That would be my first point. His view on me personally, he's never said a word to me about it in my life. He's never had a conversation with me. I think in life, if you've got a problem, you should talk about it. And again, you might not align on what you say, you might not agree, but you can at least come to a position where you can understand both sides' positions and go, okay, he talks about me. For someone so irrelevant, I don't know why he talks about me so much. And then I get stick for replying when I get asked a question about it. I'm not untrustworthy. I'm not dangerous. Dangerous is definitely a word I've never been referred to as in my life. It's difficult. It's difficult because it crosses a line between business and personal, where I don't care about like when I say I don't care about businesses, you can't really phase me in this business, as in, it's what it is. I might die tomorrow. Don't take life too seriously. Do the best you can. Do right by people. And again, a lot of people can take a view of things without any knowledge. A lot of people take a view of things about me without any knowledge of the situation. If you sit down and have a conversation with me, I'll explain the reason I did X, Y, Z. If you don't want to do that, no harm. But if you want to go and slag me off, I've never slagged him off. Never said a bad word about him. Never said I hope Conor Benyan knocks him out. Never said I think Conor Benyan wins this fight. In any discussion, I've said he's made mistakes in his career. That's just me being honest. I think he's managed his career terribly. I think he's jumped around promoters. I think he's shown no loyalty to anyone and never built any, longevity. But I've never said anything bad about him as an individual. We can all have an opinion. He can have an opinion on me as a businessman, which he has. I can also have an opinion. They're the only things probably in his career where I've said which people could determine as detrimental. Not detrimental, but it's not me saying slagging him off. It's just me giving my opinion of his career. Just like if any other fighter, you ask me, do you think this fighter's made the right decision? And I can say no. But yeah, it is difficult because it crosses a line. So
Strictly business, if the opportunity presented itself, and of course the opportunity will present itself in terms of the rematch and working together, but if the opportunity presented itself and Chris was looking for a promotion outfit, would that still be an avenue that was open?
I've never said anything wrong about it. So it's not me. Although I don't think he's going to want to come and work with a scumbag, dangerous, untrustworthy bloke like myself, is he? Look, I've never hidden the fact of I'd love to promote Chris Eubank Jr. He's a massive name. I've never sat there and said anything different. Loads of people would love to promote Chris Eubank Jr. Of course they would. But you have to just... boxing's a crazy game, isn't it? Don't write anything off because you never know what's around the corner.
In terms of writing the options for Conor Benyan, obviously Eubank Jr. presents himself as the direct option in front of him, but what are the other options on the table? I see that Pacquiao and Barrios are in line to fight each other, so that rules that one out. But if it wasn't to be Eubank Jr., what presents itself for Conor?
Do you know what fight I love? I'm not saying this is next, but at some point, Ryan Garcia. You imagine Conor Benyan, Ryan Garcia, the build-up to it as well. I don't know, look, right now he's got a signed contract to fight Chris Eubank Jr. So there is no looking at anything else. You know, it would be pointless. That's what's agreed. That's what was always agreed. That was the plan. So, yeah, that's the focus. If that changes, then we go from there. But right now, that's the focus.
Think about this Pacquiao-Barrios fight in the context of a couple of years back. Pacquiao and Ben had a face-off as well.
No, I've never said a bad word about it. I can understand Pacquiao is one of the biggest names of recent times in the sport. I think the sanctioning bodies make some very strange decisions sometimes with other things. I don't think it's... I think it's a strange decision to sanction it for the world title, you know, but then people are allowed voluntary defences, you know. And can you imagine, he goes and beats him, everyone will be in their words, won't they? So I'm not shocked by it. How many things have we seen over the years that you go, well, that's crazy? But it's boxing. Boxing is crazy.
Could you say what the lay of the land is currently with TKO, Riyadh season? Of course, there are a lot of shots that have been fired during press conferences and things, and feelings that promoters, whoever they are, on the inside and the outside, and inside and the outside, and relationships are kind of shifting. But what is the current lay of the land with Riyadh season, Turkey Al Sheikh for matchroom boxing? What is the current state of play?
We have a great relationship. You know, we do loads of work together. I spoke to the team yesterday, you know, the seller team yesterday. So, yeah, we have a great relationship with them. They're doing great things for the sport of boxing. And they work with everyone, don't they? You know, the TKO thing will be interesting, how that develops over time, we'll see. But right now, the relationship is very good, and I'm sure will continue to be. You know, we have to enjoy the times we have, because in many ways they've also changed opportunities for fighters as well, you know, and changed the game outside of just the Riyadh season and ring events. You know, look at us. We got look at the fight the other day, Fabio Wardy, Justice Huni, the press conference for that, bringing Queensbury and Matchroom together. That all was started by Turkey. So there's so many benefits that have come off of this that we'll continue to see. The TKO piece will be very interesting. They're tremendous at what they do. They're tremendous at creating brands. Boxing's very different to MMA, obviously. I'll be interested to see how things develop. It's going to be, I'm sure, a long investment process and a long process behind it and plan. But yeah, I think boxing's thriving, and the more money that comes into boxing, the more the people that want to get involved in boxing, happy days, because it's good for everyone involved.
How do you look at it in terms of a competition perspective? Because I hear Eddie say on press conferences or interviews and say, look, we couldn't do that because there'll be so much outlay for it in return for not very much back in terms of a commercial point of view. Of course, I don't know precise facts and figures, but you can see from how much or what they're doing, it obviously represents a huge outlay, and maybe they don't get that money returned back. So in the face of that, how does a business like yourself, looking for the bottom line, compete with that?
Boxing's always been a hard sport to compete with when you look at the new competitors that come in the market constantly. So every year or every 2 years, you've got some nutter coming in with fortune. I'm not calling these guys nutters, by the way. I'm saying, but over recent times, come in with millions and millions and hundreds of millions. And it's like, they're not bothered about making money. Yet we've run a consistently profitable business. Like, we're all in business to make money. That's the reality of it. You can't shy away from it. We want to be successful. We want to deliver great nights. But I think we've been consistent over the years, up against so many people coming in. They're coming in from a different angle. They got a huge sum of money. they're the most professional people to have ever done it, and they'll create a huge brand, no doubt. But I don't think in boxing they can do what they've done in MMA because I think they're too late. You're not talking about a sport that no one was interested in 30 years ago. And no one, I'm not saying no one, but the audience was much smaller. They then built from there. You're talking about a sport that has been, the forefront of people's minds for hundreds of years and been the place to be from the 1900s and even before probably. And everyone, it's cool, it's sexy, and everyone wants to be involved in the big pay-per-view nights and the big shows. So I don't think they can do what they've done there, but I think they can create a huge brand. It's what they do. Look at what they've done with Power Slap, whether you like it or not. They've created a huge brand, and that's what they're great at. So, I think it's good. I don't look at new people in the market and go, oh, shit. Like, if there's consistent investment in the sport, we're all in the right place, aren't we?
Speaking of competitors, I don't know if you saw the recent report. I think it was on No Smoke Boxing. They suggested that Ben Shalom's Boxer deal is going to be up in June. Don't know if that to be certain, but that was the report that suggested that was the case. What would your feeling be should Sky Sports pull out of a Boxer deal and boxing wasn't represented on a platform such as Sky Sports?
Times change, don't they? I mean, look at HBO, look at Showtime, who have been around in boxing for many years in the US, for example, and then decided it doesn't fit what we want to do anymore. So broadcasters can decide that. They'll have their focus sports, and if it's in there, as someone who works in boxing, it would be great if it was. But if you've had 4 years of non-delivery to the, in comparison to what we'd delivered over the years before, I can see why they'd take a view on it. If I was Sky, look, there's many arguments. Has it been a shambles? In my opinion, yes. Just my honest opinion. And some people disagree. They've got some good fighters on there. Ben Whittaker is obviously a name. Adam Azim, Caroline Dubois, Fraser Clark, Callum Simpson headlines. Are there any ready-made pay-per-view stars that they've got right now? Probably not. In reality, Chris has got a fight with, obviously, with Riyadh Season, which is separate. Ring Magazine, which is separate anyway. So, A, would I like to see Sky out of boxing? No. B, would I understand if Sky came out of boxing? Yes. No, but it's not really my business. Obviously, we were DAZN with the home of boxing. People forget we made the decision to leave Sky to join DAZN because we believed in what it was and what it would become. And now look at over the years, what it's been built into. And the people that have now come across as the global home of boxing, amongst other things as well. Boxing is one part of and when you look at the rights they've got all around the world. So it'll be interesting to see what Sky decide. It's a tough decision for them, I'm sure. So we'll see.
Frank, I appreciate that. Appreciate your time. Won't take any more of it. Looking forward to the event tomorrow. Thanks so much for speaking to Seconds Out, sir.